Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And we are back here with the owner of Avondale Design Studio, Rebecca Grotte, joining us here from Houston, Texas. How are you doing today?
Doing well.
Great. Good to have you here. Residential, light commercial, interior design space planner you are, construction drawer as well. You do remodeling, furnishes, lighting. You taught me last week a lot about the beauty of wallpaper, accessories, textiles, tile stone selection, custom drapery, pillows, custom furniture, reupholstery. I mean, there's so much to the work that you do. I'm going to have everyone visit the website, avondaledesignstudio.com. Again, avondaledesignstudio.com. And let's welcome Rebecca back to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Oh, well, tell us a little bit more about what you do before we begin today's topic of conversation.
I'm a residential interior designer. I go into people's homes and just try to make their homes what they want it to be, make it beautiful, and for it to speak to their personality. And we do that through a lot of different ways. So sometimes we're coming in to a home after somebody's been living there for 30 years and we just come to refresh the home. Sometimes we're in a new build. So it really just depends from job to job, but we're there to make the interior of the home be beautiful.
Got it. Well, let me ask you this. Last week we did talk about wallpaper, and this week we're talking more about what is it specifically? I'm just getting your photos now. Hold on. Wow.
So this week I'm talking about fabric and how fabric and sewing and piecemaking, dressmaking has influenced me as a designer.
So do you make all your clothes too? I didn't know you were a dress designer.
Oh no, no, that's something that I've done just for volunteer work I've done some light costume design for
I see pillows as well. Beautiful tops and bottoms and whoa, drapery.
Yes.
Wow.
So there's a lot to why fabric means it's really just about fabric and how fabric has played a big role in my life since I was a child. So that's what we're talking about today.
Tell me when you were a child. So tell me, who introduced you to this world of fabric? How did you get involved with design in general? Who inspired you?
Well, as a child, my grandmother was a quilter. So my grandmother's name is Hilaria Trevino. She was born in Texas in the 1920s. So she was a child of the Depression era. So that, back then they saved everything. They didn't waste anything. So she started dressmaking when she was young, and that's what she did when she was a child. But then, of course, I didn't know her until she was well and had already raised children and everything like that. But so basically, my grandmother's house was like she had 8 children, so there was a lot of grandchildren, and we would spend a lot of time there during the summer. But her fabric room, so she had a room that was dedicated just to fabric and sewing. Her sewing machine was in there, and she was also a collector, so she had jars of buttons and scissors everywhere. So I spent a lot of time with my grandmother as a child, just exploring that. I mean, it was a fun place for me. It was just like I could go in there for hours and never get bored, and that's something that influenced me as a child. I didn't realize how much of an influence it would have on me, later on in life. But she was a quilt maker, and that's really where I was introduced to fabric and textiles and just a world of color and sewing and those sort of skills that were, back then they were almost everybody sewed back then, but that was something that was not passed on to all of us. Like
Hmm.
some of us had more interest in these things than others. But my mother also, uh, she sewed also, but when she was raising me, she was busy. She didn't do most of her sewing until she was already done raising kids too. So that that's sort of how it was for my grandmother. Did it out of necessity, and then the quilting stuff started after she was raising kids. But I have a lot of her handmade quilts, and so that she was also, I mean, quilting is one of those arts that people don't realize like how much geometry goes into a quilt, how the use of shapes and how they fit together, and making a pattern, from scratch is it's something that we don't really think about today
Hmm.
because we just buy our clothes, but there's a lot of skill that actually goes into making a quilt beautiful. And she was a master of geometry. She was very good at it. Um, and so that was really the beginning of the fabric stuff for me. And it was just a world of color and exploration, because by that time, like, she was a grandparent, so she just let us do whatever we wanted to do. But she was also a military wife. Um, my grandfather served in World War II in the Pacific, and that's how he became a citizen. He was naturalized through service. And back, of course, when I was a child, I didn't know like how deep those things would go into my adulthood too. Like there's a picture that I sent of me and my grandmother. She was probably in her 80s by then. It was right before Daniel and I went off
Oh, I
to,
see. I see. Yeah.
yeah, before we went off to the military. And she knew what that life was about, but I didn't know what I was about to embark on because I was young, and I didn't I didn't realize, like, you know what the life would actually be, because we didn't, at that point we only thought we were going to be doing it for the first enlistment, and then that would be it. We'd come home. But things changed after that. But she knew what kind of commitment it was going to be for me. So she was wise, and her commitment to her family, was just something that I always think about, because she was an honorable person. She cared a lot about her family, about her country, and so that's something that my grandmother and I have in common. And I, have a few other people in my family that have served and stuff like that. But she's really the one that influenced the fabric in my life. And once I was, I spent a lot of time in her room there, and but also the peacemaking and that sort of use of shapes and stuff. I also, one of my pastimes as a kid, I'm obsessed with doing puzzles, jigsaw puzzles.
Hmm.
So that was another thing as a child that I didn't realize at the time, because I just loved doing it, but how much that patterning and stuff influenced me eventually understanding how to sew and how to piece things together. Um, and then let's see, there was, so I went, I didn't always sew. Like I didn't start sewing until after my kids were probably, I would say at least Elijah was 8 years old or so. And
Okay.
then I started sewing a little bit. I always had fabric and stuff to play around with. But then, so what happened was that he was decided to go into junior theater. And of course, the local theater, everything is volunteer. Like it's a junior theater. So the budget there was always constrained. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is something that I can do. I can volunteer. And that's really when I started
Mm-hmm.
to explore more into actually making costumes. Um, and so I worked with the junior theater for about 7 years on several different
Wow.
plays. There's a lot of, those things developed over time. On what I could do at the beginning was way different than what I could do by the end of, whenever their theater closed. But that was a big learning curve. I mean, sewing is something that it's trial and error, and I think that's part of what just being an artist or being a designer is that sometimes get you don't always get it right the first time, and you have to rip out the seam,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to try it again. You have to do it over. And because I'm self-taught, I didn't take sewing classes in school. Um, I, so that just learning the learning curve of learning how to sew is can be really challenging and difficult, but it helps you to get out of your own head. Like, look, it's not going to be perfect the first time. And I think that's really what a huge thing that sewing taught me, and dressmaking. And now I do it. I use those skills to make custom drapery. And that's really where it kind of come back around to how it affects me as an interior designer, is that having an understanding of how something is made is totally different than just saying, okay, make this, and not knowing exactly, like, if there's 15 different fabrics to choose from, some fabrics react differently in different climates. Some of them draw up whenever they're heated with an iron.
Mm-hmm.
And those type of factors matter a lot in Texas, because it's moist and it's warm here. And then also the light can affect certain fabrics in a different way. Like, for example, silk. If silk gets too much heat, it just shreds apart. So it has to be backed with, um, it has to basically be protected on the back, or if it's sitting in a window, it'll eventually just tear to shreds.
Wow.
And those are certain factors about fabric and drapery
Not everybody would know.
that
No.
yeah, it's not always common knowledge. I mean, we learn about it in school. In the textiles class, we do learn about how certain textiles react, but having the hands-on understanding, it also makes it, for me, it's given me a greater appreciation for my workroom. And so I didn't start working with the workroom until last year. Before that, it was just, I would
Wow.
send in a design and they would execute the design and they would hang it and everything like that. Which is normally, I mean, that's how it works for most designers, and that's the way it works. But working in the workroom has given me such a greater appreciation for the people that make the things that I'm designing for. Because at the end of the day,
Mm.
like I've said this about the kitchen and things, like I can make a beautiful design plan, and I can in my imagination make this wonderful plan. But if I
Mm-hmm.
don't have the people to actually execute that design, the design is nothing without the people that work with us, like the upholsterer or the guys that lay our tile or the ladies that make the drapery. That there's so many moving parts within design that I think that's a greater message that,
Yeah.
for just just from my perspective, as going into a workroom and then actually fabricating these things, has given me this just vast appreciation for the people that work. in design. And because sometimes it can be, people see a beautiful picture of a finished room, but there's a lot of hands that go into making that room
Mm-hmm.
finished and executed well. And I think that that's something that working in the drapery workroom has really just, it's just given me a whole different perspective on
Wow.
on things and how things are made and how we should always appreciate those
Oh,
handcrafts, because really a lot of these things are dying arts. Like,
yeah.
you know, it's not some that they don't really teach. It used to be you could take home ec, you
Home
know,
ec. Yes, I remember home ec.
and that was like common when we were in school. But they have, I think they have fashion design now
Do
in
they?
school. Yeah, I
Your
know
home
if
ec
you.
looks, I remember making, you have like a blanket on here I'm looking at with like clowns and balloons. It says Elijah. Is that,
Yeah, that was one that my grandmother made for my son.
oh my
Um,
goodness. I remember a home ec class making a blanket like that, patchwork of different fabrics that we liked, and then even making a little pillow like that.
yeah, that's what when we grew up. That was home ec was a thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that they've turned it more into, they call it fashion design now, but they do still teach that if the kids want to learn it. Back whenever we were in school, it was almost like mandatory, you know. But it's, I just hope that the message here, I think is like, some people are, like for me, I was always better at things that I could put my hands on.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was so much harder for me in school to pay attention to something that I was not interested in. But if
Mm-hmm.
I was making something, like I could fully dive into it, but that's just the way that I learn. Some people are more, I'm more of a kinesthetic learner than
Yeah.
like just listening to a lecture. That was always really hard for me to take in that stuff. But if I could put my hands on something, like whenever I was a musician, if I could play an instrument and I was using my whole body to do something, it was more engaging for me to not lose my focus on what I was doing. So that's something that over time I've learned about myself, is that I work better with my hands. You know, not everybody is suited just to study books. Now I could study picture books or look at picture books all day, but that sort of focused attention is something that I've learned over time, that if I have a task to concentrate on, like, okay, I've got to make, you know, 3 sets of drapery panels, and this is what I have to do for the task for the day will go by really fast.
Yeah.
And um, it's something that I can really pour into, because it's also helping the interior design world. Like it keeps me immersed in the world of interior design, but just from a different perspective. So I working in the drapery workroom has really just, it's kind of just changed my whole perspective on design.
Got it. Well, clearly you love what you do. I wish we could show everyone. Tell us how we can see the work that you do.
My website is www.avendaledesignstudio.com, and my Instagram page is at Avondale Design Studio. And I do have my Instagram feeds into my Facebook. So the Facebook page is also Avondale Design Studio.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We would love to see more of your work there. If someone wants to work with you, do you work only in the Texas, Houston area? Tell us, or do virtual work with people everywhere?
I mostly work here in Houston, but I'm willing to work in other places if somebody wanted to discuss that, when they can email me and we can talk about that.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
Good, good. What else did you want to talk about for today?
Let's see. I don't know how much time we've got, but I think just, fabric has been a part of my life, my whole life. And I, I just, so now design trends are kind of going back to um, where there's lots of color, there's lots of pattern, there's lots of it just kind of a maximalist theme seems to be trending. I don't know if I mean, I'm seeing a lot more of it, and that's really the way that I design a very bold. I have very bold designs, and but that's not for everybody. Like, there's a lot of people that love very very simple monochromatic design. That's and I can do that, but I love to see that fabric kind of making a comeback. Not like it ever left. I don't think it ever left, but it's just, they're recoloring. I know we talked about that in wallpaper too, but the fabric houses also do that with their patterns and their archives, where they will go back to a fabric that was made 100 years ago, and they go in and make it completely new, recolor it in purple and pink. And I just think that it's fascinating. I think that it's it's wonderful to see so much color again, because things kind of got gray there for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to see that bold use of color in fabric. And whenever I see it on the table in the workroom, I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Like,
Well, the fact that
it's like,
you love all this type of fabric and as an interior designer, like, how does it work for you in your own home? Are you like, look at your beautiful chair. Like, are you going to like reupholster that next week because you just want something else? Like, how does your mind work? Like, are you always changing up pillows in your house and decor? If I did what you did, I would be like, you probably doing it all the time in my own home. How do you balance that?
well, the funny thing is about it for me is that it'll take me a long time to decide on what I want. And that's why sometimes, like, you'll see like the chair and what's behind me is just black and white and gold, because everything else can get really colorful. Um, but certain colors, like, I mean, black and white never goes out of style. So I know that at least in my dining room that I'll have these chairs around for a while, before I change them. But yes, it can get like that. I mean, because there's so much to know and so much to
Yeah.
see that I a lot of times I just use the things that I already have or have already designed. Like, I'll use them kind of as chess pieces. I'll just move them around, move things around in my house instead of buying new things, because that's the other problem sometimes with being a designer, is that you see so much stuff, you want to buy it, and it's like, okay, like, I don't have that much room in my
Yeah.
house. So so I'll end up just shifting things around and playing, Tetris with all the pieces in my house just to make it feel different. But this room is, I have a lot of black and white in this room, because this is we have my son's piano is in here. So it kind of is a big piece of furniture in this room. So,
Oh, well, again, have 2 minutes left in the show. So, as an interior designer, and clearly today we're discussing mostly about the fabrics that you can bring and the different. I mean, even your shirt, I thought maybe you made yourself, but you didn't.
well, this is actually, it's actually a necklace.
Oh gosh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow, what a way to change up your any shirt.
Yes, this is I wore this one because this one's my grandmother's necklace, and it's one of these. I guess my mom gave it to me after she passed away.
Your
But
grandma actually made that?
oh no, I don't think she made it, but it
Oh,
was one
I
of
mean, but still, that's
hers.
so beautifully intricate.
Yeah, it's like a Native American beaded necklace that I just think is beautiful. So that's why I
It
wore it
is
today.
beautiful. I love it. And it
Thank
just
you.
goes with your theme of beautiful fabrics. Is it a fabric? Is it like what is it? Is
No,
it
it's
cotton?
actually this is no, these are beads.
Oh wow. So I can't even tell. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Oh my God. It
it's
reminds me of Hama beads. Do you remember Hama beads?
Yes.
When I was little, I used to iron them and make little design and patchwork like that. Well,
Yes.
Rebecca Grotte, thank you again so much. If someone wants to reach out to you and offer an initial, like a free consultation,
Sure.
perfect. And remind us how we
My
could do that.
They can email me at Rebecca at AvondaleDesignStudio.com.
Great. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for some of the beautiful work and those pictures. They're gorgeous. And I appreciate what you do and taking the time to spend the time with us today. And thank you for another great show and great topic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Oh, hold on. Is there a fabric shortage since COVID? Has that affected the fabrics that you want to buy? Is it hard to get that too? Because everything is hard to get, right? Did that
Right
affect?
now,
Now is it back to normal?
it did affect us during that time, and but things are back, seem to be back
Perfect.
to normal.
All right. Good to know. Good to know.
Yes.
Thought I'd ask. Thank you again,
Yes.
Rebecca. Have a fantastic day.
All
Bye-bye,
right, you
everyone.
too.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.